Hey, I've been getting a lot of calls and texts and messages asking me what my thoughts are on the Wagner invasion of Russia, basically fleeing from Ukraine and trying to take out the military command, according to them. I'm not going to go into the background of Wagner. You can read one of my books if you want to go into that. I'm not going to go into the background of all the fighting that's going on, but I do think that the news is being a little superficial in what they're talking about, and so I wanted to give some of my thoughts on what I think is going on. I put some notes down so I'd look like Walter Cronkite, and I'll cover them three things: the Wagner, the Russian state, and Ukraine, and basically a few points on each one. Number one, for Wagner, I'll start off with them. This didn't happen overnight. Prigozhin didn't wake up Friday morning in a bad mood, and then by Friday night he was on the way to Moscow. It had to have been planned. It had to have been planned in great detail. You don't do a 10-minute op order to get that many forces across the border in Ukraine seize the entire city of Rostov and then start rolling to Moscow. And that tells me that all of his pronouncements were actually BS. They're straight out of Putin's playbook. According to Prigozhin, he went on video and Telegram claiming that the entire invasion of Ukraine was a mistake, and it was all for money and yada yada yada, basically poking Putin in the eye. And the next thing that happened is supposedly the Russians attacked the Wagner forces, which incensed him so much he's now driving to Moscow. That's right out of Putin's playbook. That's just an attack to give him a reason to attack. I think it was '94, Putin blew up a bunch of Moscow apartments using the FSB. Their own forces killed their own citizens, blamed it on Chechens so they can go into Grozny. And Prigozhin is a master of disinformation. So I completely believe that this thing was planned way in advance before he decided to do what he was going to do. He knows this is zero sum. Prigozhin knows this is zero sum for him. I mean, he's a dead man walking. So he claims this is just about the military. It's not a coup. He's not looking to do anything against Putin. And that is absolute BS, because for what he's done right now, he's a dead man. He's going to be the next oligarch that falls out of a window. And having said that, that brings a second order thought that he wouldn't do this on his own. He knows he can't topple Putin on his own. So it leads me to believe he's got some people in the upper echelons of Moscow, in the elites, that are on his side. He has co-opted somebody. It may even be, wildly, it could be them co-opting him to get rid of Putin. I don't know. But I find it either he's completely delusional that he can storm into Moscow and everybody's just going to cheer him, or he's got some people on his side. This is not just him charging forward. The third thing for Wagner is everybody keeps talking about them as some kind of super fighting force. 25,000 battle-hardened veterans charging into Moscow. What are they going to do? Like they're a bunch of Spetsnaz commandos. That may have been true in 2014. In 2014, when Wagner was formed, it was basically just sheep-dipping people from the military of Russia into this private military company so it would give Putin plausible deniability. That's how the whole thing started. Nowadays, it's a bunch of ex-convicts that got pardoned to join, or guys that signed up for a contract and got 2 weeks of training. Yeah, they've seen battle, they've been shot at, but they're not 25,000 airborne rangers. The Wagner force is not that strong of a fighting force. Now on to the Russian state. What the Russian state has going for it right now is that Wagner in and of itself is paid for. All the soldiers that are fighting for Wagner are getting paid by Putin. I mean, they're not getting paid anymore, I'll tell you that. But that's what they get paid and resupplied by the Russian state. Prigozhin's biggest complaint early on in the fight for Bakhmut was he was not getting ammunition. He was not getting resupplied. His men were getting slaughtered because the Russian military was not supporting him. The Russian military was not resupplying him. The entire Wagner force is resupplied by Russia, which means they have to do this quickly. They only have so many arms and ammunition that they've got. They don't have a logistics tail. They can't sustain themselves. That's all was Russian military that did that. So they're going to be in trouble if they don't get this done quickly. It was all done by the Russian military that now, of course, opposes them. And the second thing going for Russia is Wagner's not a combined arms fighting force. Yes, they're rolling to Moscow, and there's some reports that they have armor capability, but they don't have what Russia has. Russia still has a monopoly of firepower inside Russia. They've got, Wagner does not have air power. They don't have helicopter lift. They don't have heavy artillery. They don't have missiles. They don't have all of this stuff. And the armor they have, they don't have logistics to keep going. I doubt they've got a big logistics trail of mechanics to keep those tanks fighting. That's all in the Russian military, which no longer is working for them. And that poses a significant problem for Wagner. They either get this done quickly or they're going to stall and bog down. The final thing the Russian state's got is that outside of Russian military, there are other forces in Russia that are most definitely on Putin's side. One of the first is Ramzan Kadyrov, the head of Chechnya. He and Prigozhin they've been doing this for a while on Telegram, each taunting each other, kind of like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. They've been going back and forth to the point where Ramzan actually challenged Prigozhin to a fight. He's got his own 20,000 man fighting force, and those guys are fiercely loyal to him, and they are well trained, and they are not convicts. He has his own training base, and they are also battle hardened. And he has said already that he's siding with Putin. Now, he is south of Rostov. So if Wagner doesn't get this taken over in a heartbeat and he starts moving on Rostov, he's going to put Wagner in the horns of a dilemma. Either they defend Rostov or they try to go all the way to Moscow. The worst case for them is if Chechens end up taking over Rostov, seizing all the supplies that Wagner was going to use, now getting the military chain of command back in function, and putting Wagner between a hammer and an anvil. They've got forces from Russia, their front coming from Moscow. They can't retreat to Rostov because they've got the Chechens there. And finally, the last thing Russian got is Putin. I've heard a lot of people talking about this as two mafia dons going at it, both trying to get their terrain, and I think that's an apt analogy. But I think the scale is a little off. Putin's been doing this for 20 years, over 20 years. He's ex-KGB. He knows how to stay in power. In my mind, this is more like a street gang trying to take over one of the 5 families in New York City. It's not an equal fight. Prigozhin doesn't have the skill set for this, which leads me to believe once again that he's co-opted some of the other families in order to take out this one family. I don't know if that's true or not, but I can't see him just thinking he can get this done. Now, for Ukraine, obviously, all of this helps Ukraine. It's just they're sitting there eating popcorn. Look at this go. They're doing their counteroffensive right now. It's kind of going in fits and starts. Well, right now, on the tactical side, they've got a huge gaps in the line that Wagner left open because they all went to Russia. If they can find those gaps in the line, they can exploit it. Operationally, the entire command that controls Ukraine is in Rostov, and they're all hostages to Wagner right now. It would be analogous to CENTCOM trying to run the war in Afghanistan or Iraq, and then someone taking over CENTCOM. There is no more control inside Ukraine. Nobody's directing that force to fight. Number one, because they're either being held hostage, or number two, because they're more concerned with what's going on in Russia than what's going on in Ukraine, which is a significant help to the Ukrainians if they can exploit it. The final thing strategically, on the operational side, on the information operation side, this could cause a collapse in the morale of the Russian army. I mean, who wants to be the last man to die in Ukraine when everybody's leaving Ukraine to go fight in Russia? Obviously, this is a bad war. When Wagner's running around saying, this is a horrible war, this is a horrible war, you're dying for nothing, that could cause a complete collapse of morale, in which case you'll just see Russian soldiers saying, I'm out of here. I'm headed home. So those are my thoughts on what's going on right now. I don't know if they're right or wrong, but I do know it's ruining my next book. Thank you very much.